Hi, this is Dick Morris.
Hey, Dick Morris. It's Mike and Jay from the Detroit Cast. How are you?
Hey, Dick.
Okay, good. Now, I can do 15 if that's all right with you.
15? Sure.
That'd be great.
We'll take what we can get.
Okay, great.
We're getting our 15 because of your new book, Rogue Spooks,
Yes.
The Intelligence War on Donald Trump. How's the book doing?
Pretty well. It's been doing nicely, and I think that it's so topical. It explains this whole Russia hacking scandal and how it really is an attempt for a coup d'état to oust Trump from office.
Yeah.
And we trace how it developed and how it began and really lay it out for people.
Well, tell us in a nutshell how this theory goes, starting with the dossier.
Well, you have to start with the hacking, allegedly, of the Democratic computer right at the convention in 2016. And my theory is that this was not a hack, but this was probably a leak by Bernie Sanders operatives who were in the Democratic committee and were deeply upset because Wasserman Schultz, the chairman, was biasing the whole process toward Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. And the documents that were leaked all related to that. None of them related to Trump. The reason I believe that it was a leak as opposed to a hack is first a committee of called VIPs, Veteran Intelligence Professionals, who are not in the CIA but all former CIA, said that it would be impossible for a remote system to download all that stuff and then leak it. It had to have been done by somebody actually in touch with the computer and actually physically there. So then in addition, when the leak occurred, the DNC refused to let the FBI look at the computer, take it, or study it, which is strange behavior for a hack. In any case, when the documents were released, that immediately set up a narrative of blaming Russia for everything connected with the campaign.
Yeah.
And at that time, Hillary's people commissioned a dossier from a group called Fusion, which is a negative research group, and they subcontracted to a former British spy named Christopher Steele.
And we still have no idea who paid for this, right, through the Hillary campaign?
Right. We know it was $160,000, but we don't know which donors gave the money.
And what were they told? Just find anything you can on Trump.
Well, find negative data linking Trump to Russia.
Okay.
Steele was a former spy for Britain in Russia, and they felt that his sources would be good.
And he was credible. He was viewed as a credible guy.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And he was because he had done work with the FBI before.
Right.
And but the dossier that emerged was ridiculous. It was an absolute piece of garbage. It said that this whole collusion deal was orchestrated by Michael Cohen, who was Trump's personal lawyer.
Yeah, yeah.
And it said that he shuttled back and forth between New York and Prague all summer setting up the deal. And in fact, his passport showed he'd never been in Prague.
Oops.
And he was
Yeah,
stateside
sorry.
the entire time. They also had the name of a guy, Gorbiev, who they said was the one who orchestrated the hacking of Hillary's, the Democratic Party's email. And it turned out that he was in a prison camp in Siberia the whole time.
That'd be a
without
little
phone or
hard.
computer.
Yeah.
And then they even misspelled names in the dossier, which was ridiculous. And then they had that story about the prostitutes peeing on the bed.
Yeah.
So the whole thing got dismissed as garbage, and no media outlet in the United States would publish it. They were worried about libel. None would publish it, which is incredible.
Yeah.
That after Trump was elected, the dossier people, Steele and his company, were desperate to get this information out to try to stop Trump from becoming president. And they contrived to get the document to McCain, Senator McCain, who then gave it to Comey, the head of the FBI.
Who briefed
Comey
Obama.
had seen it earlier, 2 months before, and knew it was garbage. In fact, he had had his FBI men trying to authenticate it and had failed to do so. And but in any case, he decided to take it up to Obama and give it to Obama 11 days before the president left office. And it promptly leaked, which was Comey's intention all along. and the media now ran that story, which set in motion this whole idea of Russian collaboration at the start of Trump's collusion at the start of Trump's presidency.
In order, though, to get to the end game of Mueller being appointed special investigator and probably looking into things beyond Russian meddling and more into business practices that might lead to criminal wrongdoing with Trump, and as you surmise in the book, probably impeachment thereafter, Trump has to fire Comey. So how does this theory work?
We're not up to that yet.
Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
When Trump took office, when Obama took office 8-9 years ago, he realized that the deep state, which we write about, the permanent establishment, was white, male, and conservative, and would try to do him damage. So he immediately appointed, as his first appointments, Holder as Attorney General and John Brennan as CIA Director, and James Brennan. And Holder and Brennan proceeded to fire everybody in their agencies, huge numbers of dismissals. Brennan even completely reorganized the CIA structure so as to maximize the number of vacancies. And they filled them with really ultra-leftist operatives. The people who interrogated the terrorists were gone, and in their place were the people who represented the terrorists as lawyers. And when Trump took office, they got these folks together and they said, do not leave, do not resign, remain at your desks, remain on duty, and help us bring down this administration from the inside.
How do you know that? Do you have sources inside that tell you that?
No, but I do know that 1,000 people were transferred in the closing days of the Obama administration from political jobs to civil service jobs.
And that's public record that you've been able to review?
Could not be removed. And that was done literally in the days before Obama left office. And so that was, in effect, telling them to stay. And then they orchestrated a series of leaks to substantiate the dossier, which was so flimsy and so wrong that it on its own had no credibility. And the main one of these leaks was 3 weeks after Trump took office, on February 14th, when the New York Times ran a front-page story that the FBI had actually overheard conversations between Russian intelligence and Trump campaign staffers plotting the collusion to fix the election. And the story was totally untrue. Comey told Reince Priebus, chief of staff, that it was untrue, but made no public statements until June, 4 months later, when he admitted at a congressional hearing that it was completely bogus.
And Trump gets really frustrated and lets Comey go. He gets really frustrated by that, ultimately.
Exactly. And the point was that Comey kept meeting with Trump, and Trump kept saying, listen, there is nothing there. I mean, I want you to get on to the priorities I have for you for the country. And Comey then interpreted that as obstruction of justice, resigned, leaking the resignation, leaking the whole memos, and triggering the appointment of the special prosecutor.
Right.
So this is all a continuing conspiracy, a coup d'etat to get rid of Donald Trump.
But what happens if Trump doesn't intervene and fire Comey? Does everybody still lie and wait? They do it some other way?
Well, they figure some other way.
Yeah.
There are plenty of ways to get that.
So,
and the
so why
point is
did
what you were just saying, which is that you now go beyond the collusion to to every past business dealings Trump has had since puberty.
But that's the key. The key, though, is to get that special prosecutor in there because he has the discretion to do that.
Yes.
And that's what you say in your theory. Hey, Bob Mueller's he's gonna find something. I mean, this guy's been involved in too many business dealings. You could even indict a ham sandwich, is the famous saying. Now, if Trump doesn't fire Comey, though, the special prosecutor never happens because Sessions doesn't recuse himself because of the interplay there with the Russian meddling and Sessions.
Sessions recusal had nothing to do with the Comey firing. It was back when he was being confirmed for Attorney General. He was asked about, did he have contact with the Russian ambassador? Again, this whole narrative spun out of the web of this totally discredited dossier. They didn't ask about the ambassador to Albania. This whole narrative was spun by the belief that there was collusion.
Right.
And Sessions did not answer accurately, although I think he did. He said that they said, do you know of any Trump campaign people who met with the Russians? And he said no, and later he said, I wasn't a Trump campaign person.
I remember that.
But nevertheless, he recused himself.
Is Trump sufficiently pissed at Sessions for recusing himself? Because this could be the end of him. I mean, if you follow your logic down the line and saying, Mueller's in place and he's going to dig something up, I mean, that was the linchpin right there, Sessions recusing himself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think he is very pissed, and I think that Sessions has refused to investigate Hillary Clinton or go after any of the outstanding issues from the previous administration, and I think that is adding to the frustration.
Speaking...
But I do not believe that would be the end of the line. I think Trump needs to fire Sessions and needs to get an attorney general who's aggressive and on his side and can move ahead. I believe that the public is increasingly learning how flawed these charges are, and they know the difference between a money laundering charge against Paul Manafort and a charge against Donald Trump that he fixed the election.
Well,
and they're not going to tolerate the impeachment over Manafort.
Well, it's very scary to me when you think about, I read that dossier, Jay read the dossier, and it was such obvious bullshit. It just was. You read it, and it was so clear. You could, every bit of that looked fake and like a hit job. And so I wonder how Christopher Steele, a respected guy in MI6 and the FBI and Comey and Clapper and McCain, the mainstream media, especially the mainstream media, how do they all fall for this and run with this? And then, now it's just kind of gone away and it disrupted everything for a year.
Exactly. I think that, first of all, Comey said in a deposition, not Comey, Steele said in a deposition in the defamation action proceeding now in London that he did not write the dossier.
Right.
That was based on unsolicited information from anonymous sources.
Could be anybody.
And it could be anybody, but it's most likely the FBI and the CIA themselves. I mean, who else would send information pretending to frame the Russians for collusion? I mean, that's not exactly something you cook up in your basement. And I think that when the full nature of this dossier is exposed, which it's not being because the justice is stonewalling that and Sessions is letting them do it, when that is exposed, this will in fact be fake news and disinformation that originated not in Moscow but in Washington.
Hey, Dick, you know the Clintons intimately. You're very clear. You very clearly take issue with Hillary pegging her loss in part on the Russian meddling point of view.
Yeah, of course.
And you approach this from an interesting angle that I've not otherwise seen much about, which is that Britain's interference in the 2016 election, you contend, was more damaging to Trump than the Russian meddling.
Hillary was not hurt at all by the hacking or leaking from her computer. That had nothing to do with the election. And the illusion that Russia had anything to do with it is also completely outlandish. Nobody can point to a single media statement or advertisement or campaign line or campaign fact that was untrue that would be linked to the Russians that had any consequence. A couple of Facebook ads isn't going to swing a general election for president. And but on the other hand, Britain kept pushing the line of Russian narrative, sending leaks to the CIA. Steele may well have been collaborating with MI6. And my basic thrust is that the real story here is not Russia intervening with the election. It's the deep state intervening with the election, whether in Britain or the United States, by creating this dossier, framing this narrative, and now attempting to use it to throw Trump out of office. And that, to me, is far more dangerous and far more likely than Russian interference.
Well, now that Mueller's there, do you think Trump survives 4 years or possibly 8 years?
Yeah, I think that he can. I think that the key to it is to maintain his popularity and grow his popularity as president. Nobody with a 60% approval rating gets impeached. When I worked for Clinton, he didn't get him. He survived impeachment with a 62% approval rating. The more, I have a column that I wrote today, that the Democrats are mesmerized by Donald Trump and by Russia, and that's all they talk about is Trump. And everything is phrased in terms of criticizing Trump. And Trump is talking about jobs, the economy, and doing a rather effective job of turning the economy around. And his job approvals in Rasmussen, which is the most credible poll, now has him up to 45. And I think that he's growing his way up to the status where you just do not get removed from office. And I think he can do that. I also feel that there is nothing there. And while you may be, and you can't prove a collusion with Russia, that I think is completely fiction.
Right.
And if you establish that Donald Trump may have been paid money, like Trump business may have been paid money to sell apartments in Trump Tower, and some of the people who bought it may have been Russian oligarchs or mobsters or something.
Yeah.
Or that he, in one of his many business loans, took a loan from a Russian bank of suspect origins. If any of those are the case, which is kind of the worst case, I don't think that does anything. I don't think that proves him unfit for office. I don't think that's a high crime or misdemeanor he committed during his presidency or while he was a candidate for president. Right. And I think that none of that would serve as grounds for impeachment. If we let this happen and we let this go ahead, no president is going to be able to take office without looking over his shoulder like they do in South America. What are the colonels thinking?
Right. Hey, going back a little bit, I know we've got limited time here, but you go way back with the Clintons. I mean, you worked on his campaign for presidency, even further back than that as an advisor and friend to Bill.
I ran all of his campaigns in Arkansas, except when he lost.
I mean, did you guys worry back then? I mean, was it just a known thing, like how out of control he was sexually with women? I mean, there were complaints back then. Did you guys worry about that?
No. In fact, I was never even aware that it was a potential issue.
Really?
Until 1990. He was very discreet about it, kept it very separate, and the media did not scrutinize him heavily until he got into the presidential race.
And so you don't think
one of these guys who brags a lot?
Yeah. Well, do you think there's always been talk of what's up with Bill and Hillary? Like, is that relationship real? You've been there since the beginning. Do you believe that's a real relationship?
Well, I've gone through this 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I think that at the start it was real. I think that Hillary has always, back in the 70s and 80s and even into the early 90s, deeply loved Bill. And Bill has always deeply loved Bill. So they have something in common.
Well, are there...
I got to go, guys.
I know.
Thank you.
Lastly, can you please, Dick, really quick, tell us how Bill tackled you one day in the hallway?
Yeah, I've been through that 1,000 times. You can read it in my
All
book.
right.
Thanks a lot, Dick.
Good luck with the book,
Thank
Rogue
you.
Spooks. Thanks, Dick.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.